From coast to coast and beyond, people in North America are doing fascinating things to make their cities, towns, and regions more interesting, more successful, and better places to live. Join me, Terry Bradshaw, as I explore all that's new and exciting about the USA and Canada and what people are doing in order to make a difference. It's an easy way to see what's happening across your own country. Welcome to Today in America. Situated along Florida's southeast coast, just an hour north of Miami and a half hour south of Palm Beach, the city of Delray Beach is one of America's hidden gems. Boasting one of the Sunshine State's best beaches, this tropical treasure is brimming with small-town charm and big-town amenities. Partaking in water activities, perusing shops and art galleries, attending popular festivals and events, and indulging in local cuisine and decadent desserts, these are just a few of the many things to do in this village by the sea. Delray Beach is also recognized by its warm and friendly people and its contagious community spirit. Also contributing to the city's success is its strategic partnership with organizations like the Community Redevelopment Agency, the Downtown Development Authority, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Business Development Board of Palm Beach County.
Success of Delray, I think, in many ways comes due to the fact that we are a very collaborative community. And by that I mean we collaborate with our citizens. We are great partners with the Chamber of Commerce. We are partners with our downtown business people, and our decisions are not made in a vacuum. We bring all the stakeholders to bear most of the time on any major decision we make here, so that we find decisions and we make decisions based upon what's good for business and what's good for the entire community.
Business Development Board President and CEO Kelly Smallridge.
Here in Delray Beach, there's a wide array of development opportunities, including hotel and lodging, office space, and light industrial, with close proximity to 3 ports and 3 international airports. And an available workforce, Delray Beach really is a globally competitive business environment.
Coulter Commercial is constructing the Hyatt Place in downtown Delray. It is the first new hotel to be built in Palm Beach County since 2008.
Our firm's developing a Hyatt Place hotel in Delray. The city, the planning and zoning, and the CRA have been excellent to work with. They got us through the process, in our opinion, in record time. They've been with us throughout every step of the process, and they've been excellent to work with.
South Florida developer Bill Morris is a longtime resident of Delray Beach.
Worthing Place is directly behind me. Downtown Delray is the envy of literally any city in South Florida. Great cultural activities, restaurants, nightlife, government center. One of the reasons why this city is so different is that the city has been restrictive in terms of height and density. They've wanted it to be the village by the sea, which is what we're called. And we have a wonderful government that is very much together, along with the Community Redevelopment Agency, which makes Delray very special.
Elizabeth Burrows serves as marketing and grants manager of the Community Redevelopment Agency.
The CRA has a lot of great economic development initiatives going on right now. We have incentive programs that we're using to try to recruit new businesses here into our district and help retain the ones we have. We're also working on 2 very exciting hotel projects. One's going to be a mixed use with new office and retail space, and there's another that'll be a moderately priced hotel. And all of these things will really help round out the economy here.
Mayor McDuffie says the city and its partners will continue to work to draw visitors, residents, and businesses to the area and to ensure that Delray Beach remains a high-quality destination.
We're a boutique little community. We have wonderful shops, restaurants, and artists here. Delray Beach is a great place to live, work, and play.
the Miami Herald in 2011 that was entitled South Florida's Downtown, A Street of Dreams or Delusions. The article began by saying, today's sluggish economy has hit local Florida downtowns hard, reducing customer foot traffic while at the same time thinning out cities' redevelopment resources. But everyone can still dream, can't they? While local cities wait for an economic rebound, some are dreaming big, anticipating a future of not only becoming a local hotspot, but also finding that all-important sense of identity. Downtown North Miami once aspired to art gallery greatness, but lately sees its future as a trendy furniture showroom. Quote, it's just timing and luck, end quote, said North Miami Councilman Scott Galvin, as a long booster of his city's fledgling downtown. If you go into it knowing that you're rolling the dice a little bit, it's worth at least taking a shot. For a decade, Galvin City has marked its downtown as NoMi, an abbreviation similar to South Beach's SoBe. Those early NoMi years boasted a growing collection of art galleries and a Starbucks. A Starbucks which, when the economy tanked, so did they go away, and left several galleries joining them in the exodus, but actually replaced by furniture stores. Galvin is still optimistic. He praises the new furniture business for selling funky fun and designs. Optimism. And we still have that optimism. And today, what I want to do as we go through my presentation is to talk to you about the things that redevelopment agencies do, because in Miami-Dade County we have 14 community redevelopment agencies. We've got about 215 statewide. And this is a common tool that's used to alleviate blight and to focus redevelopment resources on specific areas of the city. And so when you look at what's before you, and you've got the hard copy, the invest in your community are the points that I would like to make and to call to your attention, and to say that realistically, because you have a focus on a specific section of the city and not citywide, you see the ability to take action that otherwise might not be done. And what do I mean by that? Basically, if we look at the CRA in North Miami, it's about 60% of the city. And we talk about this, you as the CRA board focusing on projects that are for the CRA. And I've appeared before you many times and told you about your role as the CRA, and yet even as late as last week we had discussion that said before we extend the life of the CRA and before we accept a plan, we want to see projects in each of our districts. And that is not the hat that you're wearing when you sit as the CRA. The hat that you're wearing is not, I'm from District 4 or 5 or 2 or 1. It's I'm representing that 60% of the city, which is the CRA. And on a priority basis, what the redevelopment plan is going to require is, with limited TIF resources, what do you focus on? I think the decision has been clear that initially, like Delray, you want to focus on the downtown area, recognizing that there are needs in the CRA wide, but as Delray, the strategy is to increase the tax base more effectively so that you'll have additional TIF revenue coming in, so that when you look at the whole CRA, yes, there is a need to alleviate blight in all areas, but it's time to focus on trying to maximize the impact that you're going to have. And you maximize the impact with tax increment financing, because when the legislature established the Community Redevelopment Act in 1969, what they were doing is providing a financing technique to foster redevelopment in areas that were identified with a specific boundary based on a finding of necessity. And the idea was that the county and the city, and in some counties, other taxing authorities, contributed the increment to a trust fund to fund the projects that were identified in the plan. And so when the CRA was established in North Miami in 2005, what you had was the establishment of a base year that meant that at that time the tax from the general fund that was coming from the CRA properties would continue to come into the general fund, and only the increment, the increase after that date from the city and the county would go into the tax increment trust fund to fund projects. And so when we look at the way that it works is that you get the public redevelopment expenditures, they incentivize private projects. It increases the tax base, and the tax increment trust fund gets that revenue, and it's a circular process, as you saw in Delray. And Delray now has an $18 million annual budget coming from the tax increment from the projects that they have fostered. And this is the procedure that we have followed in North Miami to establish the CRA, the finding of necessity, establishing the agency, coming up with the plan, the base year. We've had a variety of projects that have incentivized smaller scale projects that have from facade grants and the like. And then we've actually not yet gone into debt. And I pulled this chart from a well-respected book on tax increment theory to illustrate the point that at year zero, the school district, the municipality, the park district, and the county, this would be the amount of money that they get, and the triangle wedge, which is the CRA. And what happens over the 20-year, and this is in a 20-year example, because of the base year, the taxing authorities that put into the tax increment trust fund, their income remains stable. And as the tax increment increases and the CRA gets to use the trust fund, at the end of the CRA, you can see that the revenue from each of the contributing entities is substantially greater because of the activities of the CRA in focusing the use of those resources of all of these taxing jurisdictions on the redevelopment within the redevelopment area. A recent study that was done in Broward County looking at how much public investment and how much private investment occurred because of the tax increment found that for every dollar of tax increment that was spent, $20 of private money was invested in the CRAs. And so we've also talked, and Steve Zelkowitz gave you a presentation in February that based on the interlocal agreement we have with Miami-Dade County, the CRA is to sunset in 2016. However, the initial interlocal agreement set the life of the CRA for 30 years. And it was a 30-year agreement, but it was going to sunset earlier in the event that we were not able to identify significant projects to go forward with. And so what we're trying to do at this time is to meet the mandate of the original interlocal agreement to identify the projects that would justify the continued contribution of tax increment from both the city and the county in order to fund the projects that would be identified in the redevelopment plan. And Steve talked to you about the process of extending the life of the CRA and what a community development project is and what you can and cannot do. And the reality of it is, in order for us to go forward, what we've been asking and what the other consultants have been trying to facilitate is the creation of a vision. That trite saying of how do you know when you get there unless you know where you're going. And so a vision is a clear and concrete picture of the results that you want to achieve. And Board Member Storell was very emphatic at our last board meeting about pictures, about she wanted to see and understand. And when we amended the redevelopment plan the last time in 2008, we actually started in 2009 with collecting the information that would be used for updating the plan and to try to focus, because before we were spending money, and even as late as 2011, if you look at the millions of dollars spent in 2011, from Claude Pepper Park to the swales and the neighborhood improvement projects, they were spread all over the CRA and not concentrated in trying to have a significant impact. The Urban Land Institute Technical Advisory Panel program was the first one that identified the downtown area as a primary area to get the biggest bang for the buck, to increase the tax base by investing in improvements. Basic principles: give people a reason to go downtown, eliminate the infrastructure problems, and eliminate the impediments to redevelopment. So what makes a great downtown? You had hired Keith and Schnars to come up with, what is it that's downtown? What do you see? What do we have to do? Patience, a vision, opportunities, linking the action plan to the capital improvements program, mixed use, having champions, people that actually support and go out and lobby for the improvement of the downtown. The political will, community support, flexibility, and the ability to update. Because as I've said before, plans are important, but what's really important is planning. If we go back and think about Rucks Park, the planning was what was critical, not the plan, because the plan evolves over time. Once you do the plan, it's static, and things continue to change. And you have to continue to do the market studies to understand what's happening and to get the community input to know that the plan evolves, and you've got to continually get the input of the community. And again, you have to acknowledge the existing economic conditions of the region and try to cope with the externalities that are being placed on you. Now, you have actually worked with Keith and Schnars to create a downtown action plan and to create an advisory committee. And it's interesting the approach that you're taking because, and I don't mean to divert your thought, but DPAC, an advisory committee on the redevelopment of your downtown, is really like the board of a museum. You sit on the DPAC, you sit on the board of a museum for one of two reasons, maybe one of three. One, you're going to write a check. Two, you know people that are going to write a check. Or three, you're a significant resource, architect, engineer, that actually can bring to bear information that professionals would otherwise be needed. And so when you have an organization that is going to be focused upon facilitating the downtown, it's going to be focused on helping you determine what is best. The people that should be there as your assistants should be people, for example, the Regional Planning Council, the Department of Transportation, the entities that can go back to their own office and say, we can get them grant money for doing this. And when you think about who's going to sit on your advisory body to help get this downtown done, you want people sitting at that table who can tell you where to go and can lobby to get the money. Wouldn't hurt to have your congressman sitting on it, though I don't think you're going to get that kind of cooperation. In any event, the goldenrod color was the area of the downtown that seems to be the major focus of where redevelopment activity should occur. And we're talking about the area that goes from the railroad tracks to 5 Points. We're talking about focusing on the municipal complex. We're talking about, and we will talk to you a little bit more, focusing on the area around the railroad tracks. And we're talking about the diversity and the strengthening of the retail mix and figuring out how to attract and incentivize and identify. And in fact, one of the subcontractors to Keith and Schnars is looking at that kind of issue. We're talking about the distinguishing assets, the fact that you have Johnson & Wales, the fact that you've got the antiques and the art gallery business, and the fact that with the proposed commuter rail having a station, we're not talking about all aboard Florida, we're talking about the commuter rail, and I'll talk about those details in a minute. You're talking about the opportunity to have a transit stop, a facility here in North Miami. We're talking about the whole approach to getting around the city. We're talking about the complete streets. We're talking about figuring out how to make it an attractive place to bring people downtown. We've talked about continuing the business assistance program, and you've brought in a consultant who's actually the Corradino group that's talking about new places from old spaces. They're building upon your downtown master plan, and they've looked at your trip to Fort Myers. They've looked at aspects of Fort Myers that are appealing as the alleyway improvements and so on. But the big difference between North Miami and Fort Myers is they have water all over their downtown, and we don't. And that's why I continue, and I was with the mayor and Commissioner Keys when we went to Delray. I continue to believe that the Delray model, where you actually don't have the catalytic project, that you incrementally look at trying to preserve the identity that you have and support the businesses to attract a critical mass to expand and to focus on downtown residential, to put feet on the street for the businesses that you're trying to create, to deal with. And on Atlantic Avenue, we know they actually took over Atlantic Avenue from the state in order to calm the traffic, and interestingly enough, did a bypass. And on any night of the week that you go to downtown Delray Beach, you will see the cars having the option to go to the bypass, and yet they go through Atlantic bumper to bumper just to see everything that's going on. And in a previous agenda package, we had this article that actually detailed the visioning process in Delray. And in a decade ago, we saw this article about the best run town in Florida being Delray. And 10 years before that, Delray was the laughingstock of Florida because at city council meetings, people actually threw things at each other, which I don't think we've evolved there yet.
We haven't done that.
And so you've now got the effort going to model the downtown. You're looking at the blocks in the downtown that are the subject to city incentivizing the private sector by being able to toss in the real estate they own as an incentive. You've got the municipal complex, and you've got development that goes, from 123rd looking to 126th, trying to evaluate the buildings. And back in February of 2006, you'll recall, for those of you, Mr. Galvin, Sorrell, that were sitting up there, we had talked about what was called NoMi So and NoMi No, which was trying to figure out how to evolve the downtown to take the entrances of the businesses off of 125th, like Meisner Place, and to provide pedestrian access north and south of 126th. Here, if you look at this map, we're talking about the parking lots that exist in the downtown in the municipally owned space, because, as I said, the largest incentive to getting the private sector to act is to offer as an incentive the real estate. And I said last month, what is acceptable to you? What would you allow us to do? And the other handout that you have, in addition, covered by an email, is material that relates to parking garages, because it's very important. The first one is the master plan concept, and it shows the Miramar Town Center, for which Steve Zelkowitz was the attorney. And the reality of it here is that the city bought 54 acres of vacant land in the middle of an area that was undergoing a housing boom. 14 acres, you see outlined, was where the municipal complex was going to be: a new city hall, a new office building, a building built for Broward County Library with 2 floors of Broward College above, and a performing arts center. And a public-private partnership with the developer for the other 40 acres to provide 2 garages, wraparound retail on the garages, and residential. And the second picture actually shows you construction a number of years ago, with one of the wraparound garages completed on the right, the other garage, which is currently facing a wraparound, and the municipal complex that was done. The area to the left is the area where Kimco is going to be doing the residential development. It was Rockefeller Development that was a partner with the city on the area. Miramar was able to tell the private sector exactly what to do. They had a pattern book. They had contracts. They knew where the buildings were going to go, and they knew what they were going to look like because they owned all the land. And they incentivized the private sector by giving them the land to make the numbers work. We don't have that luxury in North Miami, and we'll address that in just a moment. The next picture is a wraparound garage in St. Louis. And this is interesting because the garage is in the center, and you have ground level retail and residential. And this garage services retail and residential in the downtown. I've next provided you with an article about Project Prospect Park 2020, which is in a transit corridor in Minneapolis. And this article in 6 pages actually covers the key points to consider when you're talking about parking in an urban area. And when we talk about the commuter rail in a minute, this is an article that you should basically go to as a resource in the future. Next, the last item there is a parking garage wrap where it discusses the fact that the restaurants are moving in because the tax increment is being used as an incentive to pay for the tenant improvements. And so another example of a garage which is not as stark as we've seen in many public garages, because you're actually using a non-parking use to hide the garage. It's not quite as glorious as the one in Miami Beach where you've got a forest growing up on all 4 sides of the garage, but these are effective, financially viable alternatives. So again, and there is the mayor conversing with our transportation expert as they walk down the Atlantic Avenue in Delray, and again, North Miami, and the idea is the option of converting 125th from state to local control and what that will mean. Now, again, we're back to the question of I want to see a picture. I want to see a picture. And you saw this as the demonstration of Mocha Plaza and what the current zoning would allow. So you've got this, and the current zoning would allow that. The question is, what will it take to make the numbers work to turn this into that? You've got the building across the street, and you've got the facade grant treatment. This is something the CRA is more than capable of doing and has done. The problem is that it is spread it too far, too thin, so you don't see an impact because you've got scattered buildings. If you look at the map that's on the CRA webpage about where all the projects are, there's stars all over. And it hasn't had the impact of showing the private sector how committed you are to redevelopment activity. Right now, you've taken the innovative step of going out for a competition for design for your public spaces in the downtown. And, I was really pleased when I found out it was one of my current students that's actually running this for you. And I was very pleased to find out that the city has hired the 3rd of my students full-time to work here. So I'm very proud of the fact that you've recognized the students that come out of my program to help in a variety of things, everything from GIS to zoning. Okay, this is someplace that you've talked about. This is City Place in West Palm Beach. There are no trees. There are no people. This is Macy's. There's nobody with a shopping bag. And we need to think about what is North Miami and what is unique about North Miami. And we're not trying to create someplace else in North Miami. It has to be us. This is a kind of a place we're trying to create, something that is to scale, that is attractive, that gives people the idea that they want to come down. This is the example of a CRA in Cape Coral that does an art festival that over a 2-day period each year in January draws over 100,000 people. And what is when we say what is a leading edge issue as far as planning is concerned, healthy living places and healthy eating. And farmers markets are taking on, and garden plots and urban agriculture are becoming a quote-unquote in thing. You've seen the patch in Dania Beach becoming very successful. You see now Oakland Park's CRA actually going forward and leasing individual garden plots for the residents on real estate that it owns on Dixie Highway just north of its new microbrewery. And you see the kind of mixed-use projects that have residential above office space popping up all over the country, all over the city, all over Florida, this one on the West Coast. And in reality, this is the kind of scale that would be appropriate for many of the areas, commercial areas, in North Miami. This is one of the commercial buildings along Atlantic. And again, there's the example of Meisner Park. If you recall, the old shopping mall that was there was torn down, And they did something that was really unheard of at that time. They built the 2 parking garages on the south facing Federal Highway. The theory had always been you have access to the major traffic. They internalized the pedestrian access. They basically said, we're turning our backs to Federal Highway. It's like turning your back to 125th and saying, we're going to have pedestrians accessing our retail in a safe and attractive manner. This is a proposed project that's been approved in Cape Coral. And what's interesting about the area on the left is that's actually the wraparound of a parking garage. And so what you've done is Cape Coral Parkway, which is 4.5 miles of a major a major transportation route bringing people to Fort Myers, is the same as 125th. It's the same as Atlantic. And so the question is, how do you plan to provide an attractive place for feet on the street? This is an article that actually discusses the NoMi no and NoMi so idea that we had talked about in 2006. A turnaround might be coming to downtown North Miami, literally. The concept is, in effect, to turn our backs to 125th and to focus on the side streets. And the agenda package actually has the pictures and the GIS work that was done for that. And I think it lists the February 14th, 2006 agenda package where I pull this from. Again, we've talked about DPAC, the Downtown Action Plan Advisory Committee, and the importance of having committed stakeholders that are able to guide you as much as your advisory committee. DPAC is an advisor to the city council. Your CRA is not only dealing with downtown, your CRA advisory committee is actually for the entire CRA. So though we are focusing on downtown, there are still housing issues and stormwater and drainage and transportation and beautification issues that still have to be addressed as funding allows. This is the strategies that I talked about as I began my presentation, where the task force of city staff identified priorities of projects and identified who would be the appropriate one to implement these projects. And it was that list that the March minutes of the advisory committee show we discussed as being priorities. This is what's going to be further refined as the DPAC gets organized, and the CRA is going to be looking at what is appropriate for them. Again, the CRA were assigned exploring housing opportunities, targeting sites for parcel acquisition, targeting land acquisition and assembly, getting housing developers. And then completing the business and retail inventory, the market study. And then this potential CRA involvement is to work with the city on what was appropriate in relation to the City Hall complex and the development, public-private, that would go on there, the streetscape improvements, and the catalytic projects. And in looking at catalytic projects, we're trying to identify those things that the city of North Miami needs to have happen, but also are important to the citizens of Miami-Dade County. And we all agree that everybody who lives in North Miami is a citizen of Miami-Dade County, a taxpayer of Miami-Dade County. But the real question is, what is it that would excite the county commissioners to say, yes, the increment that we pay into the trust fund should be focused on CRA projects in North Miami like they are in the blighted 13 other CRAs in Miami-Dade County? We talked about the train station. Now, this is a brochure from 1958, when you had your new train station that was built just north of 125th on the railroad track, and that's what your train station looked like in 59. Okay?
It's actually in an episode of I Love Lucy, too, by the way.
It is an episode, so we can, I Love Lucy.
Yeah, there you go. The one with red hair.
Okay, so we can YouTube it and play it for the next meeting. But this is what it looked like. Now, it's interesting because the state is actually looking at providing commuter rail back in South Florida. And as much as we say rail is never going to happen, we're talking about a different generation making the decisions. A generation that doesn't want to drive cars, a generation that doesn't want to live in Hollywood and go to work in Palm Beach County. And so what's happened is there's actually studies that have been funded and ongoing about using different locations along the railroad track in conformance with plans for providing the All Aboard Florida, but also commuter rail. And North Miami is one of the potential identified sites. And they've also talked about the kind of facility that would be a transit-oriented development that would be the headquarters of your own minibus operation, would have office, and it would have retail. And so they've got a glorious picture. But again, the commuter rail service that is actually being planned is an 85-mile commuter rail service from Miami to Jupiter. And there's going to be 20 to 25 stations linking 28 municipalities, and they anticipate 25,000 daily boardings by 2016. And they're sharing the existing track, and they've actually funded the project development stage by FDOT. So this is actually ongoing without city participation, but they're looking for the city to say, we put the station here, what are you going to do to help us plan the area that it's going to be located? They've got the route maps. They've actually done the strengths and opportunities, the weaknesses of the different locations along the way. They're looking at Johnson and Wales. They're looking at the fact that that railroad station is downtown, And though they seem to say in their studies that there's going to be an exodus of people from North Miami, that people are going to get on the train station to go someplace else, the key responsibility for the city is to figure out how to provide the attractiveness so somebody from Hollywood's going to come here and work here. And whether we have a circulator bus that picks people up and takes them up and down Biscayne Landing or over to 5 Points or whatever. But that's the responsibility of the city, to work with the state to come up with a plan to maximize the opportunity for having a new train station. Again, they've looked at a future vision. They're going forward in planning, and we have to basically decide, and our own city staff has been involved in all of this, but as the CRA board, it's within the CRA, is this one of those projects where we should take the train station that we had, which was just a shelter, and turn it into a transit-oriented development by somehow incentivizing and partnering with everybody. Can we provide classroom space for Johnson and Wales? What are the things that we can do to put partners together to build on that site? This article from the South Florida Business Journal, Developers Learn to Ride the Rails, is about the developers that are actually looking at the sites for the train stations to make sure that there's proper zoning so that they can go forward and actually build the development. And so I actually kind of sped through the presentation because we got a little bit of a late start, but I think that we still have time for questions. And so at that point, I'll turn it over back to our coordinator and our chairwoman, to see what questions there are.
The more you're doing presentation, first of all, let me thank you, and thank you also for all those articles that you have forwarded to me over the weekend. The more we're looking at this, the more real it's becoming. This is just amazing, and I was looking at the railroads that was built before I was born, and
probably before Leslie.
That's a long time now.
And the opportunities, endless opportunities that we have in this city to make it happen. And the idea of developing a downtown, when we went to Delray Beach, the first time I went to Delray Beach, after you recommended that we go and visit there, I was amazed. The first thing that struck me was that Atlantic Avenue from I-95. When we get to downtown, it gives you the opportunity to go straight or to go in through that bypass. And the way that the downtown expanded itself, it's not only Atlantic Avenue, because when I went there, I got lost. And I kept on going west, and then I went east, then I went north, and I went south, and it was all over the place. I couldn't figure it out until I actually find that Atlantic Avenue that takes me straight to where the action was. And the other day when I was talking about the north-south development, this is what mostly I was thinking about. Having the east-west, but as well the north-south development for the downtown, for it not just to be a street in North Miami, but to be a whole area.
Yes, if you remember, the Hyatt Place is 2 blocks north
Exactly.
of 125th.
Yes, coordinator.
Madam Chair, board members, the purpose of this exercise is really to clarify for us further possible projects that we can identify to bring to the county in the process of extending the life of the CRA. So first of all, let me thank Mr. Schneidman for a wonderful presentation, very detailed, a lot of ideas, a lot of the same concepts that can be adapted here in North Miami. And he did a wonderful job, and we would thank him for that. The next thing I'd like to bring to your attention is we have with us members of the CRA Advisory Committee. We had a meeting last night, and I'm going to ask the chairperson to come up and perhaps give us the detail of what was resolved at that meeting.
Mayor and Council, Mike McDermott, Chairman of the CRA Advisory Committee. We saw this presentation that Dr. Schneidman presented here tonight in fuller version because time allowed. We had a great deal of discussion afterwards involving a lot of issues as far as zoning and expanding downtown. But the one resolution that everybody agreed on and was moved forward is that the CRA focus all of its assets and all of its resources on downtown North Miami, from the railroad tracks east to 5 Points. Because this is the center of the city. This is where everything can expand out from. And again, there's a lot of issues that go with that as far as rezoning adjacent properties and et cetera. But the primary resolution last night from the board was to all the resources of the CRA, rather than being dispersed, needs to be focused on downtown from the railroad tracks to 5 Points. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I see Mr. Chief Each is here.
Madam Chair, members of the CRA, as Mr. McDermott stated, we had a meeting last night and a great deal of discussion. I've been in the city since 1970, and I can remember when 125th Street was a vibrant, good street with full of commerce and people, and we had nice restaurants, so forth and so on. And the malaise kind of set in the 80s when we came up with this great idea that we shouldn't develop, we should keep this as a bedroom community and not build anything higher than 4 stories. We kept it as a bedroom community. I had the homeless sleeping under I-95 and 131st Street. And it just seemed to continue. We had an expression in the police department that this was the town that time forgot. And I've seen studies come and go. And, you know, I tell you, I am very excited about the CRA and what we want to do with downtown. We redevelop the downtown area, and that will spread throughout the city. You know, when we cross 125th Street by the railroad tracks, what do you see? You see an old gas station from the 50s and the 60s, an old Gulf station. It was a dump. You look across the street, you see another gas station, another gas station. And we have a chance now to get a beautiful train station right there, a hub, which we can grow from. We got to plant the seed someplace. You know, I can come up with different ideas. I daydream at night. Oh, I can remember when I was up in Illinois and Chicago, Lower Wacker and Upper Wacker, where they built a city on top of a major thoroughfare, or the East Riverside Drive in New York, where a condominium, actually probably then co-ops were built over the East Riverside Drive. And I play with that in my mind. Can we build over 125th Street, our major street? Can we close it down? Can we make it into 2 lanes going east and west? We need to have commerce. We need to bring people in. We need to develop our businesses. And collectively, the CRA Advisory Board said, look, let's concentrate our assets and our goals on developing the business corridor of North Miami. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Madam Chair, actually, with the permission of the Executive Director, I think with the recommendation of the Advisory Board last night, we may need to look at our current budget and make sure that we allocate our resources as is suggested to downtown redevelopment. So I don't know if we need a motion to do that, or if this is something that can be the next agenda. Yes, we can put an amendment to a resolution stating that fact at the next board agenda. Right?
Basically, if I can, Madam Chair and board members, when we presented the CRA budget, there were allocations for certain projects and programs. So if we're moving in this direction, the budget should mirror the vision of the CRA. So I'm recommending that it would be on the next agenda, of course, with individual follow-up so that you can see what areas of the budget and the amount of funds that it would be allocated.
Any board member wishes to ask questions, comments?
I would just want to ask Mr. Schnidman, you weren't here last month, and we're getting ready to review our downtown action plan, and I want to make sure that, from what I heard over the years, was that anything identified as a city project could not then be, the CRA could not spend money on that city project. I don't know if that's accurate, but do we have to watch what we do with our downtown development plan in conjunction with the CRA? Do we have to work together? Do we have to separate them?
Well, I think it's obvious that we can work together in a partnership because that's what most CRAs do, and we're actually bringing the county in effect, because they're helping us finance. And, you know, the legal answer I'll let Steve give in just a second, but the reality of it is that the city is responsible for things that are basic city services, and the CRA can, you know, like the new city hall is a city responsibility. But in fact, doing the improvements to the public realm that will incentivize the private sector can be CRA responsibilities. We just have to watch, because the statute in effect feels that it's not appropriate to fund those projects which are actually included in a city's capital improvement
Right.
program. And Steve, I think, can give you chapter and verse on the specifics.
So I mean, that's, I guess, where I'm going, to make sure that any projects don't go in our city capital improvement plan if we want the CRA to help fund it.
Correct. And I think that what the staff task force is doing in creating that DPAC preliminary list with priorities and assigning them to the CRA or to the city is to make sure that there's discussion about all of them. And I think that currently there are issues with the streetscape as to whether that's going to be funded by the CRA or the city in the downtown, and that has to be resolved. And then there's a question which we've talked about before about the resources that the CRA has to actually implement projects that are needed. If you're going to have a development coming online in the next year, does the CRA have the resources to do that? And what happens if they don't? And where are the resources coming from? I know that one of your Keith and Schnarr's subcontractors is looking at the financing, but we talked about the fact that there is a precedent for how the CRA can fund things when there's a shortfall of current available cash because the trust fund monies are not coming in in a quantity sufficient to pay for a project. And that is the example of the interlocal agreement the CRA entered into with the city for the first year. If you recall, and I mentioned last month, the CRA started, we had no money in the trust fund. I think I put a $20 bill in the trust fund out of my wallet when I started the bank account. Bottom line is that what we did for the first year is we had an interlocal agreement, and we borrowed the money from the city, and when the tax increment came back, we paid it back. And it was a first obligation against the tax increment coming in to pay back the loan. And so there's state grants, federal grants, bank loans, bonds, and there's always the ability to borrow from the city. And you can say that relates to the city's own ability to be able to finance its own budget. But these are all issues that have to be dealt with, and it's just one option of how you go forward in the partnership to fund projects.
And when is it that we decide the TIF structure and whether we're going to keep all the income? We're going to keep the CRA the same way, and my specific concern is 30 years of TIF money from Biscayne Landing, every tax dollar from Biscayne Landing for the next 30 years going directly into the CRA. It's a big concern of mine, and I keep bringing it up. It gets brushed over. I'm not really getting the answer, but I'm concerned. I think we need to reevaluate the TIF money coming from Biscayne Landing for the next 30 years.
Yeah, and the reality of it is that right now there's a formula that is part of the redevelopment plan. In 2016, the CRA, unless there is an extension, will sunset, and all of the tax increment revenue that would have gone into the trust fund from the city's payments for the increment in Biscayne Landing will go into the general fund, and all of the counties' tax increment that would go into Biscayne Landing, into the trust fund from Biscayne Landing, would no longer come to the city, but would remain in the county's general fund.
Mm-hmm. But the question is, can we readjust it so I'm concerned, all of the CRA, all of the Biscayne Landing TIF, I do not feel that CRA needs all of that TIF money for the next 30 years. I would like to see some of the money, instead of going into TIF, go back into our city's general fund so we can operate our city.
I think that when you redo the redevelopment plan and you go before the county and you ask for the amendment, you can ask for any kind of change in the TIF formula that you would like. The issue is the county's going to ask probably for the same percentage. And so you're talking about foregoing millions of dollars, multiple millions of dollars of county funds. And then the real question is, how do you identify the projects that the CRA would fund that would benefit the entire city, whether it's the transit station or incentivizing commercial development? Because once the CRA trust fund no longer exists and you go back to and there's no longer a CRA, the five of you sit up there as city commissioners, and I hear exactly what I heard last month, which was, I'm not going to do something unless there's money spent in my district. And so the money that would be coming from the trust fund and focused on the CRA or the downtown would be spread like peanut butter across the whole city, and you would end up not being able to have the kind of massive commitment to incentivize the private sector to do the redevelopment. On the other hand,
my question hasn't been answered, and
okay, the question really is, you have the authority. The three of you have the authority.
Who's going to do that for us? Are you going to do that? Is Mr. Selkowitz going to do that? Is Mr. Prudent going to do that?
What is it? What is it that you would like? Would you like a formula?
I want a recalculation, a new formula for the TIF money in Biscayne Landing.
What is
if I can just interject, what Board Member Keyes, what her concern is that any movement, upward vertical building, is going to increase the TIF money.
Any development.
Any development. And all of that money would be coming into the CRA. She is opposed to it coming to the CRA, all of it coming to the CRA. She would want some of it to come into the general revenue. The answer that you're giving her is that if you modify the plan to increase the border or the the floor.
You decrease.
If you decrease
the
it,
TIF.
you're going to be, the city would get some money to the general revenue, but you would be losing millions as a result of that.
We're going to be building a city of 6,000 units and commercial, and we are not going to get a single tax dollar from those taxes to maintain in our general fund, to maintain services and the maintenance of the city, employees, and everything else that goes with it. A few extra cops that the CRA can pay for is not going to help our city maintain the built-out Biscayne Landing. We're building an entire city. 6,000 people at least are going to be living there, and we're not going to have a single tax dollar to help maintain that. So I'm just saying that, and that's where I'm coming from. Thank you.
If I understand the question, is the reallocation of the TIF money. That's what she wants. She's wondering, should 100% of the TIF money goes to the CRA, or should a percentage of it comes to the general funds of the city? Is that correct? That's correct.
Madam Chair, I would suggest, for the sake of time, I will work with Dr. Schneidman. Okay. We will put together a presentation, what it means if you do that.
Okay.
What it would mean for the city and the CRA.
We would like to be educated on that, so that way we know exactly where we stand.
I mean, the reality of it is, it goes back to what is it that you want the CRA to accomplish as far as being able to improve the taxable value within the boundary of the CRA.
Would you mind making a presentation for us next CRA meeting? So that way
we
can educate us what it means?
Yes.
Please?
Yes.
Thank you.
And also we have to keep in mind that the county has to approve that. They have to go along with that.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
May I ask?
Before we do, we have...
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, madam.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. From what I'm hearing, Madam Keys, this is a policy decision. It seems like we're asking either the director or the consultant to make the decision for us. Whatever that we want this CRA to be, that's what it will be. They can't tell us. They only can advise us what they think, but whatever that you want it to be, you need to bring it as a motion and discuss it, and then we'll take the decision up here. Mine are the issues with the CRA and I'm hoping that we keep in mind that the CRA is not the board that actually we're supposed to put together for the downtown, for lack of better words. Action plan.
DPAC.
So while we take into consideration what we want to do or the kind of project, as I stated last time, the kind of project that we want to fund with the CRA money, but we need to understand that is it fit on our action plan for the downtown. I know this one does, but I'm just remind you guys we need to keep that in mind. Well, having said that, I would rather that if another question for you guys. I know that we actually voted on a form of payment for Mr. Schneidman. Is that included on the $5,000 or?
He's still under contract until the end of the month.
Okay, so whenever that he comes and all that.
Till the end of the month. I'm sorry.
Is that the answer?
He's still under contract until the end of the month.
Okay. Thank you.
We need to rush him to hurry up. He's dragging a little bit.
No, because
I have to tell him that in front of this board. He's going a little slow. I've had that discussion with him, and we need to move this along. So,
because
Dr. Schneidman, we need to move along and get this item to the county. We don't want to string us out over 2 or 3 more months. We know what we want. We need to at least know that you're having conversations with Miami-Dade County to get this item on the agenda to get it extended.
All I need is the list of projects that this board wants, and I can go forward.
Okay.
Well, education.
And I think that what we have been doing in the past is that we take our time and meet with the consultant. He'll tell us everything that we need to do, and then we'll get one presentation. But instead of asking a question, and one question turn out to be a presentation every council, every CRA meeting, so we're going like years and years while we're working on downtown, and we need we need the CRA money to support the downtown. So we need to do it a little bit faster. If we have questions, just call Mr. Steedman and ask the questions, and then get it over with.
Well,
and then
please,
move on.
please understand that my contract, I am basically the drafter of your redevelopment plan. I am basically the editor of the pieces that are required. I'm not an architect. I'm not an engineer. I'm not an economist. Those pieces were to be prepared by others to be given to me along with the vision. And so I can edit the text and put in the materials, but I need to be provided with the materials in order to go forward. And so far, I'm still waiting for the substantive materials, that is the vision of what it is that you want before I go to the county. I've met with the county commissioner from this district to talk about his support. I know the two committees that we have to go to the county. I know the process. I've talked it over with Steve Zelkowitz, and we need to have the projects that we want to put in the plan and a budget for the cost of those projects in order to be able to get a hearing before the county to actually move the process forward.
Madam Chairwoman, can we ask that staff drive this train a little bit too? Because remember, we only meet at best once a month, and we've got a multitude of other moving parts. I say this for the CRA, and it would be for the city too. We need the day-to-day paid leadership to pull in pretty good salaries to start taking ownership and moving things forward. And then if we don't like what we see, we can say, no, maybe we'll do this. But if you're waiting for us to just tell you day to day what, then we might as well fire all of you guys and just let us take your salary, and we'll come in here and we'll be here every day. Because you follow what I'm saying?
I move. I second that.
But in reality, I don't wait for me. It's time for staff to start driving. You're here every day. Everybody's pulling a salary, and if we see something we really just don't agree with, then we'll speak up. But otherwise, we trust you guys to move the ball.
Well, in all fairness to the staff, I know that they're very excited about the downtown. They're working very diligently to make sure that things are in place. I have to disagree with you on that, although I would love to have their salary, but they have been working and with a lot of enthusiasm. This is one of the things that makes me believe that finally we're going to have something done, because staff is there, and I'm sure at night when they go home, they dream of that downtown, and everybody has that, energy to make it happen. And
I agree with you.
they're good, and I have to take their defense on that sense.
That's why on the 17th of this month we have a workshop. We will be putting together a day pack committee who is going to help draw and drive that and come up with those projects and the budget for it.
That is April. At the same time, on the 25th of April as well, at the Joe Celestine Center, we're going to have a finance opportunity workshop, and it will be business loans, government grants, business counseling, step to open a new business plan writing. So we're going to have all type of people there to help you if you intend to open a new business, or if you already have a business, you're struggling with it. It's the place to be on April the 25th from 3:30 to 6 p.m. at the Joe Celestine Center. And we are partnering with, of course, the CRA, Haitian American Chamber of Commerce, and can I put on my glasses? When it comes to small prints, I get stuck. Councilman Jean Mounis' team, NANA, Bank of America, Tools for Change, Hudson Robillard & Co., Small Business Initiative, Sinal Consultant Services, Popular Community Bank. They've been wanting to do something with us for the longest. Partners for Self-Employment, Small Business Administration, and South Florida Regional Council Planning. So it is a wonderful opportunity for those of you who wants to start a business and start a business right here in the city of North Miami. There are going to be wonderful opportunity as we develop the downtown. And those of you who are not on board now, later on, don't say you missed the boat, because it's now or never. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Goodbye.
You have the majority on